How's it going, everybody, and welcome back to Jet Lag. Enjoy the show. Welcome back to episode 10, everybody. When you're watching this, it will be March 27th, Thursday. At some point, I'll be posting this tomorrow. Today, I'm filming on Wednesday, March 26th. So, we got a lot on our agenda. Actually, I lied. There really isn't that much going on as of right now. Obviously, there's a bunch of quarterbacks dropping like flies around here. Giants just signed Jameis Winston, Russell Wilson too, which I thought was very confusing. And we got some buzz going on around the league with Rodgers and the Steelers still. And even the Vikings, as of right now, they're still kind of discussing him as an option and not fully committing to J.J. McCarthy just yet. Tonight, I'll be going over some draft targets, including extending some of our homegrown stars, as you can kind of infer by the thumbnail who I'm talking about. Or there's actually a couple more players that I wouldn't mind extending as of right now. And then finally, I'll be getting into kind of my 3 offseason predictions around the NFL. They're kind of bold predictions. But let's get started. So let's begin with some of our draft targets. I got 4 players here. Obviously, I know the Jets can trade down. I know a lot can change as of right now. The draft is only a month away. So yes, they could trade back. They could trade up. A team could jump them, which could kind of shake who their targets are. But yeah, I think these 4 players I would almost put it at 80%. One of them, actually, I'll go 50%. I'm 50% confident that one of these could be a Jet. Obviously, some more than others I like. But the draft targets include Tyler Warren, tight end, Penn State, Armand Membu, he's a tackle out of Mizzou, Mason Graham, defensive line from Michigan, and Tet McMillan, the consensus number 1 receiver in this draft class. Let's get into Tyler Warren to start. So he's 6'5", 250 pounds, Penn State. He kind of really rose draft boards and caught a lot of people's eye during Penn State's CFP playoff run. He's a great blocker. He said he loves blocking during the draft combine interviews, and he's a threat in the passing game. He chose his number 44 because he admired John Riggins, former Jet. And the reason I think this is my sort of 1A, 1B, you'll know who the other player is. Actually, there's three out of the 4 players I'm fine with. One of them I personally don't want, but I'll get into that down the road. Tyler Warren, the Jets haven't had a legitimate threat and stud in the tight end room in God knows how long. Tyler Warren wouldn't only just be a threat in the passing game, he would also be a threat in the blocking game. And I think that's what we need. This kid looks like he's a hard-nosed athlete. Looks like he wants to kill people every time he steps on the football field. I was watching his highlights in class the other day, and he was just throwing himself across the goal line, throwing himself at players, and it looks like every run or every catch, every time he touches the ball, he absolutely just falls forward or plows through a defensive back or linebacker. The grit that he has as a player is something I fully expect Aaron Glenn and the front office to be attracted to, and which is why I think he's a legitimate target at 7. I would be thrilled with this personally. I would love not only another receiver in the receiving room with Garrett Wilson, but I would love to have another blocker in those heavy sets where we need 1 yard, we need 2 yards. Hell, even give him the ball at fullback. It looks like he runs with his head down. It looks like he just absolutely crushes defenders when he gets the ball. I love it. He reminds me of George Kittle. Looks like he just loves football, loves hitting people. I can't remember the last time we had a tight end or just anyone who looks like they could just dominate a game, even take over a game if they get the chance to. I love Tyler Warren. Will the Jets draft him at 7 and with a premium pick take a tight end? Maybe. That tight end room is very barren right now. It's Stone Smart, who they signed recently, and Jeremy Ruckert. So they could definitely use some depth at tight end. I think you could insert him into the roster ASAP, and he absolutely becomes another target for Justin Fields, and he's also another weapon on the offensive line. So yeah, I love Tyler Warren as a prospect, and I would be actually thrilled if the Jets took him at 7. I know taking tight ends at 7 is not really hasn't worked out for some people, or taking tight ends in the top 10. You know, we have Kyle Pitts, who really hasn't fulfilled his potential with the Falcons. And then you have Brock Bowers, who is a top 15, top 12 pick. So it could go either way, but I love it. I think if you need tight end, and obviously there's bigger needs, tight end's not really a luxury position, but it'd be awesome to just have a dynamic playmaker on the offensive side of the ball that could block and catch the ball. Next up is Armand Membu, the Mizzou tackle, 6'4", 330 pounds. He's rose draft boards more recently in the past month since the combine has happened. We definitely have a hole at right tackle. Next Gen Stats has his athleticism score first out of all the tackles at the combine. And being a tackle, I think you need to have a lot of athleticism. Obviously, we have Olu, who looked awesome at the end of the year. It sucks that he hurt his foot at the end of the year and couldn't finish the season. But I think that was a home run pick by Joe Douglas. Laughing at that now. But I'm glad that he picked him now that we could just restart with a clean slate in the front office, quarterback, head coach. So it's good to not be looking for a left tackle. Membu, we would insert him into right tackle day one as like Tyler Warren. We'd insert him into the starting lineup, and he'd have an absolutely great impact right away. My other thing I have written down here is this shouldn't... So we signed Josh Myers from the Packers, and I saw like a lot of people were talking about scrambling the offensive line. So we signed Josh Myers, who could play right guard center. I think he's a backup center. And a lot of people were saying, you know, this would be the O-line. This fills our hole at right tackle because you would have from left to right, Olu left tackle. Left guard would be John Simpson. Almost forgot about him. Can't forget about John Simpson, who was a good signing. Center would be Josh Myers. Right guard, Tippmann, and then right tackle, AVT. You can't keep moving AVT back and forth, right tackle, left guard, right guard. We know AVT is a wonderful player, and he could definitely play every single position on the offensive line. But scrambling around, I feel like we need to just keep him at right guard, keep him at where he's dominated the past year. He had a good year last year. He probably needs to get extended soon. There's no reason to sign maybe a worse center, move Tippmann to guard, and move AVT just to adapt to another position at the beginning of the year and make him get used to it. I think the best thing you could do is have consistency with this team now that Aaron Glenn has taken over as head coach. And consistency would mean keeping Olu at left tackle, keeping John Simpson at left guard, keeping Tippmann at center in his second year. You know, he was a rookie last year. And then at right guard, or was that Tippmann's second year? I forget. But he's still a young center. Keep him there. He's learning. And then right guard, we have AVT. And then, you know, there's some other right tackles available in around day 2. And on day 3, you could definitely there's some good prospects. I know. I can't name them off the top of my head. I forget. But scrolling on Twitter, there's some really good prospects that we could draft day 2, early day 2, right tackle. But if you don't want to wait, and Armand Membu's there at 7, and you think you could build up these trenches and solidify this offensive line even more, and protect Justin Fields, make massive landfill holes for Breece Hall to run through, and Braylon Allen, take Armand Membu. I think he's a really good prospect. I think the Jets would be thrilled if they drafted him. And the offensive line would actually, in my opinion, look really, really solidified. And I would be excited about this pick as well. Obviously, offensive line isn't very flashy as a fan. But when the season starts and you're like, oh, thank God we have two franchise tackles protecting our hopefully and potentially franchise quarterback for the next couple of years. That's Armand Membu. Now, move over to the other side of the ball, line of scrimmage. You have Mason Graham out of Michigan, interior D-line. He's 6'3", 295, just shy of 300 pounds. He's arguably and probably the best defensive tackle in the draft. He has the most upside. And I think the thing that really attracts me to this pick, and I honestly doubt Mason Graham makes it to 7 because I really do think the Jaguars are going to take him because their defensive line and their defense in general is so barren with star power. I just think I'm so attracted to Mason. Pause. I like Mason Graham as a prospect, and I would be happy if the Jets drafted him because they have a hole at D tackle. They struggled last year. Quinnen was just getting dominated because he had no other threats on the interior defensive line. Hassan Reddick sucked. And Will McDonald had a pretty good year, but Quinnen didn't have. I think Quinnen had a great year. It's just he's not going to show up on the stat sheet. He's probably taken on double teams, even triple teams here and there. But he's a great run-stuffing defensive lineman. And I think inserting Mason Graham, pairing him with Quinnen, could totally fix this D-line. I think just inserting him into the D-line right away, that first little wave of defensive linemen that start the game would be insane. And I'll read it to you right now. So you have off one edge, Will McDonald, who showed that his potential is through the roof. He had just over 10 sacks last year. You have Quinnen Williams in the inside on the first D tackle position. Obviously, we know what Quinnen could do, Pro Bowl player, All-Pro player. Then you have Mason Graham next to him at defensive line, or defensive tackle. And then you have Jermaine Johnson, who on Twitter is really thrilled about getting back to the Jets, and he's all sorts of pumped up, and I respect him for that. He's trying to get the fans going. I love it. Those four, that's a scary defensive line in my opinion. A lot of threats on each side of the D-line. Jermaine Johnson, Will McDonald, Quinnen, Mason Graham. Obviously, we're going to have more depth players behind that to rotate in and out. But to me, if you're an offensive line, you're going to have to be really prepared to face that defense, especially that D-line. That's Mason Graham. I'd be pumped if he falls to 7. Maybe they trade up a spot if he's sitting there at 6 with the Raiders and they really want to get him. Who knows? Next, last but not least, my 4th draft target that I'll be covering. Also, I'm going to address that. I know I had a mock draft a couple weeks ago, or it might have been a month ago, right before free agency started. And I had the Jets taking Will Johnson, and, things change. Players, I think that was before the Combine. So, yeah, players rise, players fall. I still think Will Johnson's pretty good. Obviously, if I did a mock draft right now, and maybe we'll do that in 2 weeks when I post the next podcast, I won't have the Jets taking Will Johnson. I would have a completely different draft. Top 6 might not be any different, but now you don't know about anything because the Giants might not be taking quarterback now. The Browns might be taking quarterback. There's rumors. I don't know why there's rumors about the Cowboys trading Dak to the Browns for the second pick to take Shedeur. I don't know. There's a lot of smoke being blown right now. Obviously, less than a month away from draft night. So there's going to be some outlandish things you see. And obviously, the quarterback carousel is still settling down. The dust is settling. But yeah, obviously, another mock draft might do me well. That being said, my last prospect that I will be kind of doing like a review on for a draft target for the Jets is Tet McMillan. He's not my favorite one. For some reason, I just have this sort of biases in my head that I feel like just a gut feeling that Tet McMillan is going to be a bust. I don't know if that's about playing in the Pac-12. It's not even like bad players play in the Pac-12. There's been great players that came from the Pac-12. But just something about him, I don't know. And he has crazy highlights. His intangibles are really good. He's 6'4", 220. I think the consensus number one wide receiver in the class, there's not really any other wide receivers that are really being like talked about in the top 10. Maybe Luther Burden. But yeah, he seems to be the number one wide receiver in the class. He's a possession receiver with size. He's got ball skills to win jump balls. And when I think of that, I think of Mike Evans. If you could do that like Mike Evans, then I'd be thrilled. And then I saw like a pro comp, Drake London, like a Mike Evans, Drake London type, where it's a jump ball receiver, can still make plays when they get the ball in space. It's not my favorite, but I still feels like they need to add a body in the receiver room. Obviously, I said Tyler Lockett and Amari Cooper as veterans in this wide receiver room. They would obviously be on a one-year deal. I know they're probably washed right now, but the Jets will definitely address receiver in the draft unless they bring in like two more vets. Maybe they don't move on from Lazard. Malachi Corley, new coaching staff, maybe they utilize him well. Maybe they like what they see in training camp from him. So you never know. But the wide receiver room would look pretty decent if they got Tet McMillan. If he does work out, that obviously. Tet and Garrett, you got one stud who could break your ankles, juke you out of your shoes, and then you got another guy on the outside that's a vertical threat, they're not 50-50 balls, they're 90-10 balls. So that would make me happy. I think that would be good for Justin Fields, get him a couple more weapons in the air. And yeah, those are kind of my 4 draft prospects, draft targets that I think the Jets are definitely doing some deep research on. I hope they are. Please. And yeah, so now I will be getting into kind of the last time I made a podcast 2 weeks ago. I posted it. The Texans re-signed Derek Stingley, and that's going to lead me into my next segment where I want to extend our homegrown stars. And the two that come to mind for me and all Jet fans, and I'm sure the Jets organization, is Garrett Wilson and Sauce Gardner. So I have kind of a mock contract for Sauce Gardner. I don't really know how the guarantees work and how much money should be guaranteed in a contract. If they get injured, they're guaranteed that. If they get cut, they're guaranteed that money. I just have like kind of a skeleton of what I think the contract could look like. And before Stingley got 3 years, $90 million, $30 per year, I think it was at like 25 or between 25 and 30. Like I think Surtain was the highest paid corner. And then Stingley finally got his deal, which is he was drafted ahead of Sauce, so he got 30 per year. So Sauce is probably salivating at the mouth, thinking I'm going to make so much money after seeing Stingley get re-signed. But the Jets need to jump on this right now. The market keeps going up. They could have had him a couple months ago for like 25, 26, 27 million. And now my mock contract has him at 4 years, 130 million, which is roughly 32 and a half AAV or average, salary per year, what he's getting paid. So the more the Jets wait to extend these studs, the more it's going to hurt them in the future when they have to pay them more. And obviously the cap's going up and up every year, but still, that would make him the highest paid corner in history. And I'm sure the Jets want to lock him up long term. And I'm sure the Jets want to lock up Garrett Wilson long term. That leads me to my next segment. Not segment, but next part of extending our stars. Garrett Wilson, again, DK Metcalf just got 30 per year. And I was looking at a list of kind of the receiver contracts and who's making the most per year. Obviously, Jamar Chase way up there, CeeDee Lamb, Jefferson. And then there's like kind of a tier below where it's Brandon Ayuk, 30 a year. You got Devontae Smith, 25. Nico Collins got 24.25. Jalen Waddle was kind of in that 25 to 30 mil range. I think he's just under 30 mil. And I think that's where Garrett's going to kind of fall. He'll probably end up getting 30 per year. I'm sort of leaning 30 per year because the market just keeps on going up and you never know who's going to get another contract. And I have Garrett at 4 years, 120 mil. And he's making 30 per year. So you're shelling out like 60 million per year for 2 of your studs, which you don't mind because they're absolute ball players and you need them to win games. But yeah, in my opinion, I think Garrett could get anywhere between 25 and 30 mil. Sauce is going to be the highest paid corner in the league, so he's going over 30. Give him 31, 32. Yeah, they need to re-sign these players ASAP before more receivers, more corners get extended and inflate the market even more. And, you know, you got to re-sign these guys. Joe Douglas kind of hit on that draft class. I don't know what their deal is with Breece Hall. He's almost due for a contract. Who knows what's going to happen with him? Jermaine Johnson's due for a contract. That whole draft class is going to be up for a contract. So I trust Darren Muji because he got out of that cap hell with Denver. These guys have seen good rosters being put together, and they know what eventually makes a winner. They know what a winner looks like. Obviously, Aaron Glenn saw a lot of success in turning the page with the Denver Broncos, Detroit Lions, and Muji, sort of building that team up, seeing how they built it up, and eventually drafting Bo Nix to be their franchise quarterback. And they saw a lot of success this past year. So, yeah, I trust the front office. I trust Aaron Glenn. I trust them to extend these studs, extend our stars, make the fan base happy. They'll help you win, which will make the fan base even more happy. So, yes, definitely extend these guys, please. And maybe even extend Jermaine and Breece. I think these guys are winners. That being said, be smart with your money and make the right decision and a smart decision. Now, to close, I'm just going to kind of wrap up here with my bold predictions, draft edition. And these are, so first I'll start with number 1. I saw Schefter reported something that there hasn't been, everyone in the NFL owns their own first round pick like this close to the draft in the first time in years, which is crazy to me because you always see like future first being traded, and usually you're like, oh, how do the Rams have 2 first round picks? Oh, it was a trade 2 years ago then when they got so-and-so. But it's crazy how everyone owns their own first round pick, and you're usually seeing some trades, I think around this time, maybe a couple weeks ago, was like the anniversary of the Jets trading up with the Colts to get Darnold, when they made that trade before the draft started. And we haven't seen any trades, and this is one of my first bold prediction. There will be no trades until draft night, including a first-round pick. I think that would be crazy. I highly doubt it, but that would be nuts because that means a lot of GMs are sitting on their hands and they're ready to strike a deal. So I think if there is no trades until draft night, until the first round, I think we're going to see a bunch when the draft comes along. I think it also means like there really isn't this one guy in the draft that a lot of people are targeting, I think Abdul Carter and Travis Hunter are those guys, but I don't think a team's willing to mortgage their future to draft one of them. The second bold prediction, Cowboys trade up for Ashton Genty or Tet McMillan to get a playmaker for Dak Prescott. I think it's more likely that they trade up for Tet McMillan. I think Tet is going to go top 10. Genty is going to be scary because the Bears, he's been linked to the Bears. He's been linked to the Raiders. So I'd look out for Genty and Tet to go to Bears, Raiders. I think even Pats could take Tet. Niners could use a receiver. I think there's a lot of playmaker needy teams, and I wouldn't be surprised if the Cowboys trade up for one of them. Obviously, trading up for a running back might seem stupid, but they might be desperate. And my final bold prediction to wrap up the night, picks 1, 2, and 3 will be quarterbacks. Now you're going to ask me, how is that so? Well, I'll tell you right now. 1, Cam Ward. 2, Shedeur Sanders. That leaves 3. Now, the Giants just signed Russell Wilson and Jameis Winston in their QB room. They're still being linked to Shedeur Sanders, but maybe if those 2 fly off the board, maybe, just maybe, they draft Jackson Dart at 3 because they're like, we're not leaving this draft without a quarterback, without a guy that we like. Or, since they have those 2 vets, they trade down and a team jumps up to 3 to take a Jackson Dart, Jalen Milroe, a so-and-so, a 2-3. And you're going to be like, well, that's a reach and a half if you're taking Jackson Dart at 3 or Jalen Milroe. I know it might be, but when a team needs a quarterback and when they think they have their guy of the future, you do everything in your power at any cost to get that guy in your building. So I think picks 1, 2, and 3, we've seen quarterbacks fly off the board before. We've seen, We've seen Trevor Lawrence, Zach Wilson, Trey Lance. Who else? Who was 4? I don't know. We've seen a bunch of quarterbacks just fly off the board in a row. And we know quarterback's the most important position, so I would not be surprised. I know it's bold, but if all the picks 1, 2, and 3, the Titans, Browns, Giants all draft a quarterback. That's going to do it for episode 10. A lot. I think this episode was a good one. Kind of went into Garrett Wilson, Sauce Gardner, draft prospects, bold predictions. Thank you for watching. Hope you all enjoyed episode 10, and I'll see you guys next episode. Peace.